Today's episode is brought to you by RIMOL Greenhouses.
Whether it's tomatoes to market, flowers in the spring, or your family's harvest, growing in a greenhouse protected from the weather provides the right environment that you need for a harvest that you can count on. RIMOL Greenhouses are designed for durability and offer the quality that you need to grow productively year-round. Visit RIMOLGreenhouses.com to get a quote today.
If I may editorialize for a second, I own a RIMOL tunnel. I love it. We built it ourselves, and I really appreciated the quality of the tunnel as well as the customer service we received in the process, so make sure to check them out. Today's episode is also brought to you by Growing for Market magazine. For 31 years, Growing for Market magazine has been the source of practical ideas and information for direct market vegetable and flower growers. All articles are written by farmers who get their hands dirty and know what they're doing. If you do farmers markets, CSA, farm stand, pick your own, florist sales, or wholesaling, whether you're a commercial grower or want to grow like one, subscribe to Growing for Market for the nitty-gritty details of growing, marketing, and the business of small farming. Available as paper magazine and a digital download with thousands of archived articles available. Use the coupon code WORM, that's WORM, to get 25% off any subscription at growingformarket.com. All right, let's jam. Hey, you all, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to the No-Till Market Garden Podcast, episode 17, season 4. Really great episode for you all this week with Brooke Salvaggio and Dan Hurrier of Urbavore Farm. I had Brooke on, which you will remember way back in season 1, but I was excited to hear from Dan as well this time around, to catch up on the farm a little bit, but also hear about the community composting business that they brought into the operation and are integrating into their farm there in Kansas City. I just can't help but feel like there's a really fascinating model here for incorporating a community composting business into your farm business that not only generates 6 figures in gross revenue, but by design gives you all the compost you could ever possibly need. We discuss how certain no-till techniques have helped improve their methods over the years, which notably they are still dry farming, though they are dabbling with the idea of getting some water out to their fields. And there's also just something really quite old school about Brooke and Dan. They remind me very much of the farmers I was meeting when I was getting into this business. Off-gridders who work wild hours and that sort of stuff. But Urbavore is also evolving their practices quite a bit and bringing on these new ideas and new techniques. So it's fascinating to see that shift and how it's changing their farm, including a massive reduction in time spent pulling bindweed. But first, did you know that a single episode of shows like, Radiolab or any of those well-produced NPR podcasts can cost $250,000 or more? Per episode? That per episode cost is nearly double our entire yearly budget. In other words, compared to other podcasts, your dollars go extraordinarily far with us. For the price of one of their shows, we do dozens of podcasts and videos, and we keep it all free and open to the public. So if you enjoy our work, even giving a small amount goes a really long way. So please consider supporting us at patreon.com/no-till-growers. There are discounts there on merch and things like the Living Soil Handbook and events when we get back to those, but also at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, say $2 to $5 per month, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs this week to Rosemary Primavera, Danny Rodriguez, Stephen Smith, Scott Snodgrass, and Lucas Brendel. Big thanks to everyone who supports our show in whatever way that you can. Buying a copy of the Living Soil Handbook specifically from no-tillgrowers.com is a great way to do it. You can always just Venmo us a few bucks to @no-tillgrowers to say thanks. There are lots of young farmers out there who may not be able to swing a few bucks every month. Think of them. We appreciate all the support and we'll continue to crank out awesome stuff for you like this amazing episode with Brooke and Dan of Urbavore Farm. Brooke and Dan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. We're excited to be here again.
And yes, I'm so excited to have you back, Brooke, and you for the first time, Dan. So maybe catch us up a little bit, recap the farm, give us an idea of where you're located, the size of acreage that you're working on, and maybe just add in there, has that changed much since we last spoke?
Sure. Yeah. So we are located in Kansas City, Missouri, and we have an urban farm here in KC. We're about 5 miles from the city center. We've got 13 and a half acres, and we produce veggies, fruits, pastured eggs, and pastured pork. As far as our production size, it varies from year to year. We're always changing things, but our vegetable production tends to be between 1 and 2 acres in any given season. We've got probably an acre to 2 acres in perennials like strawberries, asparagus, blueberries. And then we have a lot of ground for pasture. We've actually got about 5 acres in failing orchard that we use for animal pasture. So, because we move pigs all around the farm, we move birds all around the farm. So it's a pretty diverse landscape, especially considering the fact that we're in the city. I mean, it's not every day that you see, 30 hogs roaming, on a property in the city.
Yeah. And I mean, certainly things have changed a little bit over the past couple of years. Like Brooke said, the vegetable size fluctuates from year to year, depending on how much in crisis we're feeling.
But how energetic, how depressed we're feeling.
Exactly. But yeah, we also added in a new element of doing a community composting program. I mean, we were already doing a composting program, but it's significantly expanded. So now
which we can talk about in more detail later. So that's kind of a new sister business, and that in and of itself takes up space on the land.
Right.
So lots of stuff. And when we bought this land, it was completely raw, and we were very young and very idealistic, and we sort of took the long, hard way. We thought we were going to build, this completely off-grid, sustainable, amazing farmstead, and that the city would have no problem with that. And it would be really easy to get this through coding. So we've been kind of fighting the city to build this vision of ours. And, at this point, we have our home. We have an earth berm home that we've built. We have an off-grid water system that uses sand and gravel and UV light to filter the water. We also have a gray and black water system. We've got solar panels. We have a makeshift barn made out of recycled shipping containers. We have a lot of alternative elements to the farm and to our infrastructure that are constantly in progress. I mean, we're still, it's been 10 plus years, but we're still not finished.
Well, and I mean, the really unique aspect about, I feel like a very unique aspect about our approach to infrastructure is that we've been very committed to staying out of debt. So we have not taken out any loans. I mean, we have this very unique situation on the land purchase that was kind of sort of a loan. But
all in all, we paid for everything out of pocket. Like I joke that turnips and beets paid for the farm and everything you see on it. We started growing vegetables on this raw land with no water, no electricity, and we used the money from those veggies to pay for everything. So it was kind of stupid, like looking back. It used to be a point of pride for me, but now as I get older, I'm like, maybe we should have just taken out a loan and made it easier. That, and the other, but
I mean,
makes us unique.
Regardless, it is notable. Like 6 years in, it was 6 years in before we even had water or electricity. So,
Right.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I know, it's crazy. I don't want to ramble about that too much, but just to give people some context, because we are on raw land in the city, and because of the way our land is set up, it was going to cost us $20,000 just to tie into municipal water. So it was things like that kind of created a situation where we wanted to think differently about how we might access water. Hence, this crazy off-grid water system that we built. And the off-grid water system cost a lot too, and it took many years to build. But there were so many hurdles to do things the normal way that it really pushed us to think more alternatively and do what we really thought was better for the environment and better for us, and, met our vision. So yeah, that's it. But that's why things have taken so long, because they're not straightforward.
What about employees? Is it just you two, or do you have help during the season, or what's that look like?
Yeah, so our employment situation kind of varies. It has always been me and Dan, hardcore all the time, driving ourselves crazy, working around the clock. And then in any given season, we will have between 1 and 2 full-time apprentices, and then maybe between 1 and 2 part-time workers or volunteer apprentices that work maybe 15 hours a week in exchange for food and learning. So we have a lot of varied apprenticeship and volunteer programs. We have held off on doing straightforward employment until the past couple years. We brought on our first full-time employee a couple seasons ago. We've, because we were building our land from scratch, we've always had to go really, go short on labor just so that we could pocket every penny we could and put it back into the farm and build the farm. So I think I hope we're finally at a point now where we can start to focus more on hourly paid labor, still do apprentice programs because I think they're important and I enjoy doing them, but hopefully be able to pay a handful of people a good living wage. That's the goal.
Yeah, I mean, I think the goal is to develop some of the people that show interest and skill as apprentices into full-time employees or part-time employees, depending on their interest. And so, we're excited. We were hoping that we were there this past year, but things happen as people, people's lives and things like that. But we were hoping that we can employ some full-time people and build them into people that are integral parts of the farm, Yeah,
we'd like to see more lasting relationships. I think To date, we've always had apprentices who've been here 1 year, maybe 2 years tops, and that's been great. But I would love to see people kind of grow with us and even take on their own entrepreneurial projects on the farm, because we have there's so many things you could do out here, whether it's running meat birds through orchards, or there's so many projects I'd love to do that I can't do. And I think some of our apprentices turned employees turned partners, we could just do a whole bunch of cool stuff. So yeah, that's kind of the long-term vision for that. But to be more clear, for instance, this year, I am hiring 2 full-time apprentices that will work about 40 hours a week. And then I'm hiring 1 part-timer who was here last year, and she'll be here about 20 hours a week. And then I will we get tons of volunteer interest because we're in the city and we're so accessible. So I'll have a couple volunteer apprentices working about 15 hours a week, and then I'll have casual volunteers coming and going. So in some ways, there'll be a lot of bodies out here at times. But as most farmers know, volunteer labor is very different than trained labor that, has been doing it for a while. So it's a give and take with that, for sure.
The other thing I'll note is that, the whole compost business side of things is a whole different animal. They're
They're separate. 2 separate businesses.
They're separate businesses. So there's a whole set of employees that is on that business, and we could talk about that further.
Well, the cool thing about having bought this compost collection service and running the business from the farm is Dan and I, who are so used to doing everything ourselves with Urbavore just in some ways not being very professional about it. Compost Collective is very much a professional business, and they have employees, and we're learning a ton just by, being a part of that now. And I think it's going to help strengthen Urbavore in that respect. So it's interesting, but yeah, at Compost Collective, we have 6+ employees, and they have varied responsibilities, varied salaries, and Dan manages all of them now, and it's been really good for us.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about this Compost Collective, like how that, maybe just give us a little bit of the history of it and how you all decided to take that over.
So I'll quickly talk about the compost program that we were running prior to buying this business. But when we first bought this land, smack in the middle of this city neighborhood, we thought, this is ridiculous. All these people are throwing away food scraps, and we're right here and we could compost these food scraps. Like, why can't we just do that? And so we applied for a grant to help us start our citywide compost program, which is a free service. There's a big dump trailer in our front parking lot, and anybody in the metro area, any resident, can just come and dump food scraps. It can be meat, dairy, cooked food, raw food, any of that. They can also dump yard waste. So that program's been going on since 2011. And it like I said, it was not a money-making program. It's just a free program to the community because we don't want to see food get thrown away. And we were then taking the food scraps and sort of badly composting them in a large windrow at the back of our property. And, I like to say compost happens. So it didn't need a lot of we didn't need to put a lot into trying to produce some beautiful compost. We were kind of just turning it as much as we possibly could and making the compost happen slowly but surely. And unfortunately, we live in a very urban area. The compost was so laden with trash that it became very apparent early on that we weren't going to be able to use it on our fields without investing significant time in trash removal. So, it's kind of been this passive program where, the food waste gets composted, but we don't actively use it all that much. And frankly, we try to spend as little time as possible with the program because it's not generating any income for us.
And
so
I
that's
had
the
always,
history.
yeah, and I had always wanted to evolve that compost program to be something that was an asset for everybody. The people that were using the compost program were abusing it and putting trash in it and stuff like that, and that was a hindrance to making it an asset. And then our physical ability to manage the compost, the site needed improvement and stuff like that. Needed a base surface to turn compost on and stuff like that. So, it was just not working, and I always wanted to do more with it.
It was a long-term goal
happen.
of Dan's to make that program super legit. And we always knew we would eventually. And then, when the opportunity came to purchase this business, in a way, it kind of fell in our lap. During the days where we were running our free program, Compost Collective, which is a curbside compost pickup service, that goes door to door and picks up food scraps from residents. When they were just starting out, they needed a place to dump those food scraps. And in the early days, they weren't collecting very much. So they were dumping in our free dumpster for a while. So we'd formed a relationship with them early on. The owner's a CSA member, in fact. So, we'd been in conversations with them for 4 or 5 years. And then we were having a conversation with them about, I guess it was a year ago or something, about maybe Dan and I were thinking about kind of revamping our compost program and expanding it and being able to take more volume. So we were talking to them about accepting their waste again. And in that conversation, the owner just kind of dropped in on us. She's like, guys, I'm going to sell the business and I think you guys would be amazing buyers. And I'm just going to put that out there. And we were like, Meredith, you're nuts. We can hardly run our own business. We're going crazy. We're not buying another business. And then we got to talking about it more, just Dan and I, like while weeding beds or thinning or doing whatever it is, laborious long jobs. We would just talk about this harebrained thing that Meredith had thrown out there. And the more we talked about it, the more it actually started to make sense for us as, in a lot of ways. For one, it was a way to truly legitimize the composting that we've been doing here for 10 years.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Also, it was a way to strengthen Compost Collective and strengthen the community composting effort here in Kansas City, because Dan and I are well-known farmers. We have a lot of influence. I think, just by us purchasing Compost Collective and then Compost Collective composting on our farm, it makes it so much more convenient for both businesses. And it's such a strengthening relationship for both that it's going to save Compost Collective money. Urbavore is going to make money off it. It made so much sense. And then also, we're old and tired, and I'm not saying we're going to quit farming anytime soon, but this is a really good investment for us. We could potentially, the farm wouldn't have as much pressure to make a big profit because Compost Collective, as it grows, can be a profitable business. So as we get older and we can't work the fields as hard as we work them now, this is kind of something really good to fall back on. And it's an investment we believe in. We've never been the type to invest in anything because our ethics typically keep us from doing so. But this is something we can 100% get on board with. Mm-hmm. It just started to make sense after lots of conversations.
Yeah, there were a lot of synergies, in terms of savings for Compost Collective, and just having all the operations here at our farm makes it more sustainable financially.
Just as an example, Compost Collective as a business, they were renting warehouse space and paying a ton of money to do so, and then they were also paying Missouri Organic, which is our big composter recycler in the area here that does great stuff. But they were paying Missouri Organic a lot of money to dump their compost, and they were driving very far to do so. So it was becoming very costly just to run their operations. And once we took over, we were able to cut those costs, I don't know, in half.
Yeah, like thousands and thousands of dollars a month saved, so it was significant.
And now all the trucks are parked here. The composting all happens here. The employees start their day here. Everything's stored here. We're renting like a real small, cheap space, not far from the farm, just so we can basically do all the laundering of the cleaning rags and wash the buckets and that sort of thing, which that's something that we can set up to do on the farm probably in the next couple of years. Yeah. So yeah, it's going well. It's been a big undertaking. It was a big learning curve there for a minute. We took over in August, which, as you know, is like a really crazy time on the farm. And suddenly Dan's like, yo, dude, I'm like out of here. I'm doing Compost Collective stuff, Well,
yeah. It was tricky because we, at the same time that we started taking over Compost Collective, we also lost our full-time 40-hour employee.
He had it's really sad. He had a medical issue arise. And so he was kind of, my right-hand man. And so that was hard.
Yeah.
It was tricky, and it was stressful, but at the same time,
long-term, it's going to be, it's the right choice. I think it was a good
and
thing.
We're over that hump now.
Yeah,
I feel like we've got it down now, and we've kind of designated time and hours where Dan will have his meetings and, do the Compost Collective stuff. And then he'll be available for the farm on other days at other times. And, we're figuring it out. But the awesome thing is about, when you buy a business that's already operating, that's just it. It's already operating. The employees are there. The systems are in place. You come in and you make the systems better, but you're not starting something from scratch. So it was really nice to just hey, I just bought a business and it all works and you guys work here and you know what you're doing and see you later.
Yeah. I'm curious, what's the goal? What's the product? Just to kind of maybe talk about the business of it.
Sure. Yeah. So,
what it is.
Back to basics. What it is that it's a curbside community composting program. So people pay a fee It's $30 a month for weekly pickup of their bucket of compost.
It's what size are the buckets? They're not 5 gallon.
It's a 4 gallon bucket of compost. So people can fill up a 4 gallon bucket. They also typically will put out like pizza boxes or other paper, larger paper goods that
can't fit in the bucket.
And there's like a lot of that like food waste type of stuff that can't really be recycled. So it's perfect for compost. There's like lots of stuff like that.
There's lots of add-on stuff that comes with it.
But I mean, basically $30 a month gets you weekly pickup of your compostables that fit in a 4-gallon bucket. You can add more buckets if you have that kind of volume.
You also do a bi-weekly pickup that's cheaper.
Right.
And then we also have this bin swap program so that you don't have to really commit. You purchase a bucket for, I don't know, it's like a one-time purchase.
It's like $10 for the bucket. And so you buy the bucket, and then there's currently like about to be 14 locations throughout the Kansas City area that people can drop their bucket off.
Once it's full of compost, they drop it off, and then
they pay a $8 fee to swap for a new clean bucket.
Clean bucket. Yeah. So that's it's like the gateway to composting. It's like they get to feel it out on their own terms.
And it's also, I mean, it's just a question of like who they are, what their situation is. Right. If they're not preparing a bunch of vegetables at home and they're just like eating takeout and stuff like that, they might not be producing a ton of food waste. They might not need a ton of, stuff to compost. So, yeah, I mean, if you're a single person living in an apartment, then you drop off your bucket once a month or even less than that. It just reduces the cost for them. It makes it accessible. But, that stuff gets both the bin swap program and the curbside program, all that material gets brought to the farm. We just set up a kind of a shrunk down version of what we were envisioning to be a big compost site.
It's about how big would you say the site is? It's about
it's about a quarter to a third of an acre that on the land, and it's kind of closely tied in with the rest of our infrastructure.
To give you a little more context, right now we're taking food scraps from a little over 2,000 households a week. So
wow,
it's a lot of waste.
It's a lot of waste.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I mean, I would say I would say that right now we're probably taking about 10,000 pounds of food scraps a week.
Wow.
So it's a good bit.
So the site is about a third of an acre, and it's the process was just leveling it, and then it's not paved, but it's got
like crusher run limestone base down on it, so it's like fine limestone with some bigger chunks in it and stuff like that, but that's really level and compacted. And then we set up concrete bins, concrete block bins, so they're bays, bins, whatever you want to call them, but they're like 18 by 24 foot concrete block.
People have seen them, those big old concrete blocks that you see that often form retaining walls.
Yeah,
sometimes.
They're like 6 foot by 2 foot concrete blocks, and they and so you have these bays that are 18 by 24, and they're about they're 3 high, so I guess they're 6 feet high. And then
right now we have five of those bays, which allows us to, store certain materials in the bays. Also move material over when right now how we're doing it is we're taking food scraps for about 8 weeks. Every day we're incorporating leaf mold into that for our carbon. And we'll do that for about 8 weeks time. And then that entire pile, which is massive at that point, gets moved over to the next bay, which is empty. And then it sits and does its composting.
Yeah. So it's all really new still. We just started using this new site that we built out in December. So we actually we've filled a bay and we've moved over compost to another bay. We've probably got about I would say 150 yards of material in that one bay that's full and actively composting, and then we're starting to fill back
now
up
we're
the first
starting
bay.
Starting in again on the first bay. We were supposed to have 10 bays. That was the plan, but we had applied for this really nifty grant that we were very sure we were going to get. It was a $50,000 grant, and we had no questions that we would, we thought it was in the bag,
and we didn't get it.
And then we didn't get it. So we've had to phase out the build and compromise the build of the site. It's still very functional, and I'm happy with it. But there were. Yeah, we have half the bays that we intended to have. The bays were supposed to have these fancy covers on them. Those are not there.
Yeah, to kind of protect them from big precipitation events and stuff like that.
And we can achieve the same thing with tarps. It's just more of a pain in the butt, and it doesn't look as professional or nice. We still, because we're in a city neighborhood, we have to keep neighbors happy. And most composting facilities are out in the middle of nowhere because people complain. I mean, composting facilities get nasty. And so we really have to be on good behavior and keep it tidy. And in a way, it has to be very approachable. It's an urban farm. There are people on here all the time, and it just can't. We have to give the perception that composting is not gross, because we are trying to get people to do it and to embrace it and to understand that it is a way to curb climate change, and that it's something we all can do in our own kitchens. It's it's something we have control over. So I feel like there's a big responsibility there on our part to make it not nasty. So yeah, that's a chore, because rotting food scraps are rotting food scraps.
With the bays, was that decision part of the trying to keep it neat element of it, or what? Like, why did you go bays instead of windrows?
So windrows take up a lot of room, actually, when you're trying to do this kind of volume of material. So the bays were mainly space efficient. So we didn't want to use our whole farm to turn our whole farm into a composting facility. We just wanted to keep it.
Yeah, we got to have space to grow stuff.
Yeah. And the bays allow us to make a really big pile. And the windrows, you can fit a lot of material in a windrow for sure, but you have to space them out between each windrow to make sure you can manage them, and that you're not having drainage issues and various things like that. So,
and furthermore, the bays allow you to push up against that back wall, which is so important when you're trying to turn the compost or incorporate material, or, it really makes a big difference. The windrows, you can't do that if it's just a loose pile sitting out there.
Yeah, I mean, you have to keep your windrow pretty narrow to keep it so that we use a skid steer to turn it, and you have to keep it pretty narrow to make it so that the skid steer can in fact turn it, can actually push it over the top and start really moving the windrow down the way. So yeah, for us, it was like a management choice and a space choice.
But I think, one of our goals is to sort of create an example of what a composting hub, community composting hub on a community farm, create what that could look like. And, sort of sell that to other farmers, not actually sell it. I mean, sell the idea, try to make any money off it. We want to see farms like ours creating these compost hubs. And, I know how hard it is as a grower to make a living off vegetables and how much work that is. I think if a farmer can have some sort of quasi-passive income, while supporting the cause of growing vegetables and supporting, the environment, that's just really amazing. Like right now, Urbavore makes about $2,000 a month off the tipping fees from Compost Collective. So, that's not nothing. And that number is growing as the volume increases. So at some point we might be making $4,000 a month just off, the tipping fees. And yes, there is work involved in that, but not nearly to the degree that there is with veggie production or ranching or any type of farming for that matter. So, the composting is is fairly passive. So
relative to farming.
Relative to farming, yeah, that's the key there.
Yeah.
So, and while I think we kind of, I don't want to say overdeveloped our compost site, but we put a lot into our compost site. There are many variations of this that could be executed on farms, that could cost, a fraction of what we spent. And, we're taking a lot of volume. Community, you don't need to take that much volume to be a community composter. Yeah. You could have freaking 20 households, So yeah, I'm hoping that through our experience here that we can kind of create some sort of model or blueprint to share with other growers. And even as Compost Collective, the business grows and expands into other municipalities, like for instance, we're expanding into other areas right now. We might be expanding to Lawrence, which is a city about 40 minutes away from us. So at some point, it is not going to make as much sense to bring all that material back to our farm. At some point, it might make more sense to say, drop that material at a farm in Lawrence. So if we can help that hypothetical farm create that hub and drop our stuff there, I would feel really good about giving my money to these farmers. I would love to see Compost Collective as a business be supporting these farm hubs all over the place. That would be really cool. And even if that could happen on a national level, as this whole community composting thing grows, it's becoming more and more, it's happening in more and more cities now. So
yeah, for sure.
I think farms could be a really vital part of that.
And then I'm assuming that in the end, you're selling the compost, correct? Is it
actually that's a funny thing? No, we're not. So we're going to have a lot of compost to use on the farm.
Well, tell them why we're not selling the compost.
Yeah, sure. So when we started looking into purchasing Compost Collective, one of the big sort of open questions was like, okay, like we're talking about developing a new composting site. We're talking about changing what we're currently doing. Is that going to be allowable?
Right. Remember, we're in the city.
State and city regulations. And so we started looking into the various regulations and checking in with the agencies that oversee that stuff. And, we got approval from the state of Missouri. That was kind of the first step, Department of Natural Resources and stuff, to be able to do this, and presented what we're trying to do, and that all worked for them. But when we approached the city, it looked as though the regulations had changed from when we first started our program back in 2010 to 12 years ago. The regulations had changed for composting in our situation, and so it didn't look like it was permissible anymore.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. So the original program we were running, the free program, where people were just, rolling up to the farm and dumping their stuff in the dumpster, that free program was grandfathered in. So we could keep doing that, but we couldn't change anything.
Well, we weren't sure. We weren't sure what the regulation was going to be. And it turned out that through just, the weird city stuff, cities have weird codes, and they have all these things surrounding like businesses in your homes and like different uses for your home and stuff like that. But there's all manner of strange regulations in cities, and because the legal team at the city checked it out, and they were like, you know what, you guys can do this. You won't fall under this sort of purview of being an industrial composter that would require you to have like these insane setbacks and stuff like that if you do not sell the compost.
Yeah,
so not selling the compost was key to being able to continue to do the service.
And they view it as an agricultural activity.
Yeah.
So since we're zoned agricultural, which is actually, super important. If you have an urban farm, you really want to get zoned ag if you can, because if you're not, you can't really do much. So we're lucky enough that we are zoned agricultural.
No, it wasn't luck. We did that.
Well, yeah, no luck. It was a big freaking long fight. Yeah, it was a big deal. But forget about that.
But yeah, so because we were zoned agricultural, it was an agricultural activity, and so long as we don't sell it, then we don't fall into these other regulations. And
so anyway, that may sound ridiculous to some people. Like, why would you do this if you can't sell the compost? Well, for us, I mean, having, unlimited amounts of compost, I think is going to revolutionize our growing game out here. So I'm super excited for that. And furthermore, like, as I said, we make a decent amount of money off the tipping fees. So, that's good enough for me there. And honestly, I don't want to start bagging and selling compost. I don't need another product to sell. I'm bagging enough greens and roots and anything else. I don't want I don't need to do that to make this legitimate. So maybe someday, if the regulations change or we fought to change them, if that became really important to us, because I'm sure it could be very profitable.
Well, honestly, I was surprised to find out, as we read more about community composting, getting into this, it sounds like a lot of the farms throughout the country that are doing this type of community composting are not selling their compost necessarily, because it's just kind of a pain in the butt.
Right.
It's a whole nother product.
So yeah, I mean, a lot of them are just using the compost on their farms. You can load up your fields with a lot of compost. It's not a problem.
Yeah, as you know.
That's so fascinating. I mean, if you look at the numbers that you said, like $2,000 a week, if you're doing, each person is paying whatever, $30 a month. So how much?
Right. So to clarify,
$2,000 a month that we're getting in tipping fees.
So we Urbavore, it's kind of confusing to people because yes, we own Compost Collective and we own Urbavore, but they're two separate businesses. But we own them both. So Compost Collective pays Urbavore so much money every time they dump a truckload. And right now that amounts to about $2,000 a month. So Urbavore, the farm, gets $2,000 a month just for accepting this food waste. And that number will go up as the volume, as Compost Collective grows and takes in more households, then, Urbavore will make more because they'll be dumping more truckloads here. And then Compost Collective.
Well, and also is to clarify the business model thing is one of the reasons for that separation is that we own 85% of the business. We don't own 100% of the business. So there's the original owner is still invested in it. And then also our operations manager
is vesting
is in
ownership
as well.
Yeah. And also though, I think we would have kept the businesses separate regardless.
Probably.
Because it makes more sense. I think it would have been complicated to make them one, and it would have been a remarketing too, which I wouldn't have wanted to do. Rebranding, I guess I should say. But then Compost Collective, I mean they generate a lot. Their yearly income is very high. Obviously, there are a lot of expenses. We have a bunch of drivers and an operations manager who gets a good salary, and the drivers get paid well. And so there's it's a good business. And Dan's salary, so Dan gets a salary, which is new for us. So that's in addition to our farm income, and that's super helpful. So our income is changing a lot. I mean, that said, we bought the business, so obviously we just put a bunch of money into that, and we built this compost site. So it's been give and take, but I think we're gonna see our money back pretty quick, and then we're gonna be profiting. Yeah. So yeah, we're happy with it all. We're really frugal people, so it had to be a really good sell for us to bite into it. We've spent so many years trying to stay out of the hole and, just live by our own means and not take out loans and not deal with banks and all that. So, it was a big, I joke that it was like our first big adult decision to buy this business. and the numbers had to look really good in order for us to take that plunge, so I think it was ultimately a very good investment. No one's going to get rich or anything, but that's, it's not the goal, but I do think it's going to, just personally speaking, it is going to give Dan and I some security and freedom. I mean, I've been tied to this farm for so many years, and prior to farming, I used to travel and, seek inspiration in the world and, go places. And I do want to do those things again someday. And I want to do those things with my kids. And I think this is going to allow us to do those things. So
that's great. Hey, you all, just jumping in real quick to get a word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by BCS America. BCS two-wheel tractors are designed and built in Italy, where small-scale farming has been a way of life for generations. Discover the beauty of BCS on your farm with PTO-driven implements for soil working, shredding cover crop, spreading compost, mowing under fences, clearing snow, and more, all powered by a single gear-driven machine that's tailored to the size and scale of your operation. To learn more, view sale pricing, or locate your nearest dealer, visit bcsamerica.com. That's bcsamerica.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Farmers Web. Farmers Web software gives you the tools you need to manage your entire sales process. Built specifically for farmers' needs, Farmers Web helps you to save time, reduce errors, increase efficiency, and provides flexibility for working seamlessly with your whole customer base. Visit farmersweb.com to schedule a demo, try their free account or a 1-month free trial of their paid accounts, and don't forget to check out their free how-to guides on selling online to individual buyers, as well as how to work with such buyers as restaurants, schools, and stores at www.farmersweb.com. All right, back to the show. One of the things I know you've changed is you've brought in some tarping and you're doing a few different things in the field. Do you want to talk about some of the different practices that you've kind of been playing with or trialing?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, just to give a little context, I am not your typical farmer in that, and Dan too, I don't know what to call us, but we don't listen to podcasts. We're not really tapped into the whole farmer social media world. We don't read as many books as we absolutely should. So we've kind of gone on this no-till adventure that we started 12 years ago or so, just kind of in a void, not, just doing things that made inherent sense to us as growers, but we weren't getting advice from the masters, and honestly I think that was a mistake, but it's just our personalities. We're not plugged in. We're just out there doing our thing. So we kind of developed this no-till system without I feel like reading all the Bible books that every grower and certainly no-till grower reads today. So now, fast forward 10 years later, our systems have changed a lot, and I'm not super plugged in by any means, but I am starting to tap into some of the really great stuff that other no-till growers are doing and employ that more in our fields.
Like Farmer Jesse.
I really like your book. Yeah, I'm not all the way through it, but I really like it. It's so fun to read books by no-till growers because there's so many things that we're doing the same, and so many things that you'll say something like, oh my God, yeah, I totally do that, and I totally agree with that. And then there's other things that are completely new, and it's just, I don't know, if you read those books as a new grower with no experience, sometimes you don't get as much out of them. I feel like now reading books like that are super helpful, whereas before, I don't know if it would have made a whole bunch of sense to me. So anyway, we have kind of evolved from a crazy no-till, never been tilled, virgin no-till system that was a deep straw mulch system, so we did that for years, where the fields were, mowed and any amendments put down, and then heavy straw mulch put right on top of the sod to kill it. And then, you go from there and you grow in it. And I don't know why we were so young and naive, but we have heavy clay soil. I mean, you could argue that it's more like subsoil. And for some reason, we didn't really understand that compaction was an issue. And it took a while to wrap our heads around this compaction
and we were
thing.
also, we were like, so like, I don't know, had this purist and had this vision of like,
you don't penetrate
we're not
the
gonna
soil.
Like, do it in by unnatural means. Like if we have compaction problems, then we're gonna like use
slowly
cover
over
crops
time
and things like that are gonna
naturally
break up the
work them
compaction.
out. Yeah,
and that has its limits
for sure. And I mean, I think one of the interesting things is our farm has always been just successful enough to not like overhaul your systems, or to not like, you're stressed and you're wishing things would work better, but you're still like doing okay, and your vegetables are really yummy and everybody loves them, and it's still just okay enough for you to think, okay, I guess I'm going to keep doing it this way. But I think at some point I realized, you know what, this could be so much better, and we need to think more critically about this. We were also, we were building this farm from scratch. We were building our home. I was having babies. Like, it was insane. We had no water. So honestly, I think it's only been in the last 2.5 years that I've actually we've gotten to a point on the farm that I can think more critically about the art of vegetable growing. I think prior to that, I was in survival mode with vegetable growing. So yeah, I feel like I'm doing some of my best farming and thought process now, and in a way it's kind of exciting. It's like I'm reborn and I can focus on growing vegetables and doing it well. And, so, we have, there's so many things we've done, and there's so many things that need to be noted because we're so weird. We are very anti-plastic, so we don't use tunnels. We try to use as little plastic as possible in our fields. We also don't irrigate, as a way to use less plastic, and because our water resources on our land are really limited. So we practice dry farming, which is, damn near impossible some years.
Yeah. I mean, our average rainfall here, I don't know what it is there in Kentucky, but here we get 38 inches on average a year. And,
but it's been
20.
But
that would be a really, really dry year here. We get, 40 or 45 is pretty dry for us. Like, we usually get in the 50s and 60s.
That's just awesome. I don't know why we're not there. And that 38 is more like 32 or 30 in the last couple of years.
Yeah. And we're also, as I'm sure throughout the country, people are experiencing this, but here,
it's hotter.
It's like you have these major storm events where you might get 10 inches, but then you don't get any rain for 2 months,
Well, yeah, interesting. I don't want to go off on a tangent, but like this year, for instance, we got like, I don't know, it was like 7 or 10 inches all at once in the spring, and it was really wet and it was cold, and so the crops kind of got stunted, and then that was followed up by excessive heat and drought for about a month, and that that was June. That was setting the stage for the entire season. So that kind of it has been happening for the last couple of years. And I guess my point is it's getting harder and harder to dry farm. And because I don't have, this perfect solution, I can't just start irrigating tomorrow. I really have to focus on how I can mitigate, the damages from the lack of water. Like, how can we make this less stressful for the plants? So anyway, our systems are evolving a lot, and we kind of have a hybrid of things going on. So we've got several fields that are all permanent raised beds, and the raised beds were a reaction to the psychotic like spring rain we would normally get, that and with our heavy clay having super poor drainage, I finally, got sick of that, and I raised up the beds, and then, ironically, it seemed like the next 2 years were incredibly dry, and my raised beds were kind of, slapping me in the face. But anyway, I've seen good and bad with our raised beds. So we've got a couple of fields in permanent raised beds, and then we have some fields that are completely no-till, but they're not raised beds. And then we have some fields that we cultivate or run pigs through occasionally, not super heavy. So there's a lot of things going on. I would say we've got the low till thing going on, we've got the hog till thing going on, and then we have more straightforward no till happening. And it's good, because you can do different things in different fields. Like our land, one field can be so different from the next field. So there's some fields that absolutely need to be in raised beds. There's others that should not be. There's others that really need to have cultivation happening at times. We have horrible bindweed pressure. And so during our purest no-till days, bindweed was literally taking over the farm. I mean, it was insane. I think on the podcast last time, I told you that I spend about 80% of my time pulling bindweed.
Yeah.
I don't do that anymore. I don't pull much bindweed. After we brought in the pigs and started doing a little bit of cultivation, that seemed to interrupt the bindweed enough to set it back. And then also we had one really cold winter that really knocked our bindweed back, and it was amazing. And it's never come back as strong since then. Oh. So anyway, those things have been helpful. I am noticing in some of our permanent raised beds now that I'm not, that we're not messing with much. The bindweed is starting to take a little bit of a hold again. So we'll see. I mean, that I know there's always this argument of to till or not to till, and bindweed is a good argument for a low till approach, I would say, but so we are also taking the approach of employing tarps a lot more. And that was something I had really avoided because I hate plastic. However, I tried it. Everyone was doing it. You got to try it. And, and so I tried it and I got a little taste of that stale seed bed action, and I got a little taste of killing cover crops with it. And it was just like, oh my God, this is too good. So I've been using tarps, I don't want to say heavily, but somewhat intensively for the past couple years. But I'm already seeing so many improvements with our weed pressure from the tarp usage that it is my goal to sort of transition the tarps out of play. If I can get our weed pressure 100% where I want it, then I don't need the tarps for the whole stale seedbed phenomenon. Mainly my hang up is what am I going to do about, executing the cover crop. So, and we've got pigs and we've got executing. And I know that you've played with this on your farm too. And there are other methods. We just need to explore those more. But yeah, the tarps are not a long-term solution for us because I've never thrown one away yet, but it's going to happen, and I just think with where we're at as a planet, we cannot keep developing farm technology that involves plastic. We need to move beyond that. So, and tunnels are their own thing. And I'm glad I've just never had a high tunnel because I think I'd be so addicted to them if I did that I could never get rid of them, because we make a lot less money by not having tunnels. Most of our farming friends around here, because the weather is so insane and so erratic, they are actually like farming only in tunnels. They're throwing up caterpillar tunnels everywhere. They're trying to farm as little as possible in the field. Because it's really hard. So I get that. But here we are like not irrigating and farming exclusively in the field. So it's tough, but another major change has been the fact that we are still using straw mulch, but we're using more and more leaf mulch or leaf mold. And I'm finding for starters, that's just better for our weed pressure in general. The straw is laden with weed seeds, specifically wheat seeds and other weed seeds. And, no matter how good we were about keeping up on pulling the weeds, if you're laying down that much straw every year, you're kicking yourself in the foot every time, The leaf mulch does not have any weeds in it. And
some, but not
I'm
as many.
very little, and I find that I really like it when we can get leaf mold instead of leaf mulch, stuff that's already kind of broken down and feels more like compost. So we're working with a lot of that, and in varying ways. I've found that straw mulch is better for certain crops or certain situations. The leaf mulch is better for certain situations. We're also
soon we'll probably be using compost instead of
right.
leaf
I know
mulch.
that's the thing. Like, all this straw and all this organic matter that we're outsourcing, that we are buying from someone else. Pretty soon, we're going to be generating all of it, and the compost. We're getting different carbon sources on the farm. Landscapers are going to be dumping here, and we're going to be getting leaves and wood chips and all sorts of material. And then in addition, we'll have our finished compost. So we're going to have a lot of stuff to choose from. And maybe I think we'll still always get some straw. But, we might be able to phase out a lot of the straw that we're purchasing, and just really get crazy with the compost. As far as things I'm trying to do this year to mitigate some of the issues with our raised beds drying out. The raised beds are great for us in the spring, and then suddenly in summer you can't grow a damn thing in them. So, and this is, amazingly, we still fill CSA shares and still get stuff on the table. I don't know how sometimes, but I am going to fill in the aisles in the raised beds with wood mulch if I can get it, and if not, leaves and leaf mulch. So our raised beds are pretty significant. So I'm hoping that just by filling in those aisles super high and super dense, that's going to give us a little bit of relief from the drying out. And then of course our beds, like we keep mulch on all of our beds. Even when we're direct seeding crops, there's a lot of mulch debris on the beds. And, I guess the big theme for us is just how do we continue to do this without irrigating, and what little tricks can we come up with? We're also employing the tarps to keep areas moist. We found that, because we go through these insane dry spells, that there may be a field that I need to plant in a few weeks, and we just got a much needed rain, and I know I'm not going to get rain again. So I'm going to get that baby tarped as soon as it rains, hold that moisture in, and then when I untarp it in a few weeks, I'll actually get my stuff to germinate. Because, to give an example, for fall crops, for instance, usually we haven't had rain for weeks, and I seed stuff in soil that is cracking and dry, and I don't get rain for it to germinate. Some of the fall crops may never see rain until, they're close to being harvested. So it's pretty wild, trying to work with that. And the tarps have really helped me keep things moist, scurry and cover something after a fleeting rain, and keep it moist until I need to plant, and that's enough to get stuff to germinate. We are doing some spot watering here and there, as necessary. We have a tank we've been pulling around the farm and spot watering some things when we need to. We're in the process of finishing this water line, this long-awaited water line that runs down the center of our farm, it's not enough water to just straight up irrigate the fields by any means, but it will be enough water for us to water all our livestock every day, and to spot water as needed, and maybe do some heavier watering in some areas from time to time if needed. But the nice thing is we'll have spigots every 100 feet. So the water is going to be very accessible, because when I'm pulling around a tank, I'm literally taking watering cans and dipping them into the tank and watering with watering cans. If I have spigots and pressure, and electric, I can actually, maybe use a hose to do some spot watering.
So is the infrastructure, is that kind of the hesitation with the irrigation? Or, I recognize water is an issue, but
I guess there's several limiting factors with our water. So we can't drill a well here. We don't have good groundwater resources here. So we're really limited to surface catchment. And on our 13 acres, we're on top of a hill. Mm-hmm. There's some low spots, and it just kind of all falls away on all sides. It's not like falls to one spot. So we have our potable water pond that we use for our in-home water and also our wash water and all that.
And that's a 1/4 acre pond that we put in on the best spot possible on our land, but it still does not catch what we'd like to see it catch.
Right. And then in the next best spot we just in 2020 put in another pond, and that is the main source water for this new water line that we're putting in. Yeah, so it's either tap into steady water or catch it.
Obviously chlorinated water,
Yeah.
which I just can't do it after spending
we've done
this much time
Yeah.
to build the microbiology. I can't water with that.
But yeah, our source water is limited. We can over time perhaps create some more ponds, swale systems, that would
creative catchment systems.
Yeah, that would feed more water and catch more water around the farm. But it's definitely a major challenge here to try to do catchment, and that's what we're doing.
So and then also, now we've dedicated ourselves for 10 plus years on creating these dry farming methods and learning how to do it, because it really is totally different. I have to approach seeding and planting so differently than farmers who can just turn on their irrigation. So it's like we have this knowledge and we have this practice, and we believe in it too. There's so many parts of the world that do not have water, and I really believe in showing people that we can grow food with very little resources. So I guess we're both kind of stubbornly stuck to that, and that's a bit of the hang up for sure. But like Dan said, I mean, at the end of the day, the reality is the water is not easily attainable. We can't easily get at it. So yeah, and it, I guess it's all easy to say while it works, right? But I guess if the droughts get worse and worse, maybe we will have to really overhaul and figure something out. Right now we're frustrated, but we're okay. I do know I just can't compete with the yields though that other farmers get. If you can't put water on crops when they need water, obviously you're not going to be harvesting, as much. And that's just a reality, right? And I also don't plant as much as other farmers. I can't do as many succession plantings, I'm just limited in the fact that at some point it's hot and dry and I can't put plants in the ground and expect them to grow. So it's really, I don't know, we've really developed a unique system that works for us. We grow certain things that work. We still have a full array of vegetables. We have a CSA that's getting 6 to 12 items at any given time. Our food tastes really good. A lot of flavor packed in there. It's not watered down, but it's tricky. I think other farmers would feel very confident, okay, I'm going to take my CSA up to 200 members and, I'm just going to pump out the food for them. I can't say things like that. I can't do that. I am very limited to the fact that we dry farm. But I guess I'm willing to work within those limitations because I do believe in it. These are weird arguments because, we are the only farmers I know like this. So it's hard to justify that position sometimes. And it's hard to look at my friends' farms and all their setup and what they're able to do. It's hard on me.
Yeah. But I mean, this water line that we're putting in, it will be more water than we've ever had
I think it's
before.
going to be a game changer, a little bit.
And I think that we will be able to take a hose and water in, some fall crops if we need to, much more easily than we would be able to otherwise. And that water resource is there.
And I think if we need to douse the tomatoes, in a really tight spot when it's dry, then we'll be able to do that, And,
we just won't be able to broadly irrigate. And maybe over time, if we do put in more ponds and more, catchment, then we will be able to more fully put in some, irrigation or something like that.
One thing, and I know we can't go on and on about the water. One thing we would really like to do or to see happen is, we are right in a neighborhood. There are houses, running all around us, and streets that the water is just rushing off these streets. The water lines are constantly busted and water's just flowing everywhere. I mean, it's like I'm surrounded by water and my plants are dying because they're so thirsty, right? It's like all this water is being wasted all around us. And there's just so much runoff. I wish I could work with the city and the neighbors to somehow try to harness and catch that water and utilize it in a worthwhile way. And that's a big undertaking if it, obviously if it has to do with other people and the municipality, it's not an easy thing, but I feel like there's got to be a way to get this water, it's being wasted. And so maybe someday we'll put all our efforts into some crazy plan, to try to, I don't know, some like neighborhood pilot program, water catchment pilot program, I mean, it's the thing is with all that cool stuff is it can happen, but it takes time and it takes time and resources. And it's usually not for profits that have time and resources to put into those cool projects. And, we're not that. We are a mom and pop business and we've got to be out in the field and, we can't, I don't know. There's so much good stuff that could happen. And I think all farmers feel like that. It's like, gosh, if only I had the time and the energy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I love that idea, though, community composting and community water.
Absolutely. Yeah, they go hand in hand. And I think that, honestly, that kind of stuff is going to have to happen, period, if we're going to, continue to live on this earth. So we're going to have to do things like that. And those things are going to need to become sort of a normal thing that everybody does.
Right?
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Well, Brooke, Dan, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me again. And this has been so much fun.
Good. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And I love your book. I'm so impressed that you were able to put in the time and energy to write that and just continue the podcast and continue everything. It's really great.
Yeah, it's really cool. You're doing good stuff.
Well, good. Yeah. Well, happy to do it. All right, if you enjoyed that episode, make sure to follow Urbavore Farm on Instagram and all the places. We will hook it up with links in the show notes. Some quick ways to support our work. You can swing over to no-tillgrowers.com and pick up a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook. Proceeds from that sale at no-tillgrowers.com go to making you more free content. Venmo us a little bit if you'd like to @no-tillgrowers or PayPal to no-tillgrowers@gmail.com. All that works too, and we super duper appreciate it. And of course, if you have not already, or maybe if you haven't in a long time, join us on patreon.com/no-tillgrowers. Thank you however you find a way to support our work. Subscribe to this podcast wherever you are getting it and leave a review. But this week, all reviews will be composted and used in the gardens because regulations say we can't technically sell them. Oh well. Today's episode was brought to you in part by a grant from Southern SARE. Big thanks to Jackson Roulette for all his work, Josh Satin for his video guidance, Willie Breeding for the theme music, and of course, my amazing wife, Hannah Crabtree. Thank you all for listening. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Have you ever lost one of these completely?
Last week was the first one I've ever lost, and I felt really bad.
Are you going to redo it?
I did redo it. So I did it that week. I called him and I was like, hey, can we do it again? And he was kind enough to do it again. I just felt horrible. Yeah.